One thing can lead to another. It doesn't take any sacrifice. Oh, father and mother, sister and brother, if it feels nice, don't think twice. Just shower the people you love with love. Show them the way that you feel. Things are gonna work out fine if you only will. Do as I say. Shower the people you love with love. Show them the way you feel. Things are gonna be much better if you only will.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and all creatures great and small. Thank you for joining me for a extra special edition of the No Pete Survival Guide. I'm your host, Mike Yankura. As you can tell, it is just a boy and his microphone. And haven't been around for the last couple of months doing my podcast, and the reason for that is, well, one, I'm gainfully employed. Two, had a lot of busy activities, some that have gone well, some that haven't. But being at Christmas Mass tonight kind of compelled me to do another edition of this, at least one more. So hopefully with your kind indulgence, you'll hear it through and hopefully get a good message of hope in this greatest season of all. So first of all, I'd like to thank everybody who has listened to the podcast. I'm almost worldwide. I'm definitely international now. A couple people from Australia, a couple people from Europe have downloaded the podcast, and whether you like it, hate it, or anywhere in between, thank you for at least downloading and giving me a try. And this particular podcast, I'm probably not going to publicize it like I would to my family and friends. You know, I may give them a little indication that I'm doing something, but not gonna make it widely known. And not completely sure why I'm gonna do it like that, but I think something just tells me that this, like a lot of my podcasts, have been more for a cathartic experience for me. But I want to thank you for those who have listened in, those who have told me they've listened to my podcast, listened to my story, going to work, coming home from work, and just getting to know a little bit about me. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm honored and humbled that you have listened to a part of this. Again, I'm never going to reach the Joe Rogan levels, but if I reach one person and hopefully inspire them to be a better person, then it's all worth it to me. But I wanted to touch on the year that I've had and the year that all of you have had, considering everything that's gone on in our country and in our world. And what I'd like to do is hopefully give you some good news, to say that you know what, we're gonna be fine if we show love, give love, receive love graciously. That we're gonna be all right, and this world is gonna be all right, and that we're preparing ourselves for the next world, whatever you believe that to be. And this year's been, to say the least, a challenging one for myself. And even right before the new year began in 2020, between Christmas and New Year's, I had come down with a case of COVID. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to be another statistic in this growing number of this pandemic, and yeah, I really didn't know what to make of it. But to kind of go over that experience just quickly, and I didn't feel good one day, and I had called into my old job saying, hey, I'm not feeling well, I'm going to stay in. And I was told, yeah, you got to go test for COVID. So, here being in Columbus, Ohio, they had something on the state fairgrounds in one of the pavilions where you drive through. They put that 2-foot Q-tip up your nose and where it basically touches your brain. And they say, okay, we'll let you know in a few hours. And that I ended up doing that around 12 o'clock, I want to say. And I think it was either Monday or Tuesday of that week between Christmas and New Year. Well, needless to say, I wasn't feeling much better later that day. And I had my brother drive me to the emergency room at Ohio State Medical Center. And got to the COVID tent or whatever it was, and told them my name, and they said, yep, you just came in, you got COVID. So, ended up in the waiting room for what seemed like an eternity, but it was probably only a couple of hours. They got me in, got me some fluids, and they gave me an antibody. And it was experimental, and I was like, all right, we'll give it a shot here and see if it works. They gave me an IV drip of it, and don't ask me to tell you the name of it. I'd have to dig through my paperwork to look it up, but it's, well, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. In any event, a couple hours later, I was feeling okay, not 100%. They sent me home around 7 in the morning. Got home, slept. Still felt bad, but probably within 24, 48 hours, I was feeling a lot better. Of course, I had to be quarantined for the week or two or whatever it was, just to be sure. But yeah, I ended up feeling a whole lot better. And in the meantime, I had received a call from my friend down in Florida saying, hey, how'd you like to run this apartment property or 2 apartment properties? While me and my boyfriend are sponsoring this drag race car and everything like that. And that ended up falling through, but just the prospect of moving down to Florida really enticed me. And one thing I may not have revealed in the previous episode was I had also applied for a police dispatch position here locally in the Columbus, Ohio area. and saw that there was an opening down in Coral Springs, Florida. So I thought, what the hey, we'll apply and see what happens. Probably won't hear from them. So 2021 rolls in. Right around middle of January, they're like, yeah, we'd like to have you come in and take the test. So I was like, okay, cool. So at the end of January, booked a flight down to Fort Lauderdale, went to Coral Springs to take this test, which it was 15 parts, all pass, fail. You fail one part of the test, you fail the test. There was another young lady in there taking the test with me who had tested out with a couple other police departments for dispatcher. So I figured out she's probably shoo-in. Well, she finished the test and she failed at some point. So I was just kind of finishing up. They called or I basically called them after I finished the test. They said, oh, okay, you passed, so we're going to have you listen to these calls and make sure you're able to handle stuff like this. Well, then I told them, hey, I'm living in Columbus, Ohio. I gave you a Florida address, but I'm currently living in Columbus. And they basically said, well, you can fill out the application, but we're probably not going to accept you unless you were living down here. Which was disappointing, to say the least. But I got a good taste for Florida and just enjoyed every aspect of it. And it got into my head that, yeah, it may not work to run the properties down there. It may not be a police dispatch, but I could live down there. I could work down there, do a new beginning. And everything was kind of interacting at the same time because right around February, the right foot that I still had at that time, I basically clipped the toenail, didn't let it heal properly, and that kind of started that process. Well, in March, or at the end of March, I drove down to Florida, put in a whole bunch of applications, did some interviews, said, hey, I'd love to move down here, and etc., etc. No real prospects or opportunities per se. So I went back home, and before I left Florida, the infection in my second toe went over to my big toe, and that's when I really started to worry. I ended up getting a chronic case of the hiccups all the way driving home from Florida to Ohio. It was Hiccup City. I mean, for 24/7. And yeah, I knew at that point something was terribly wrong. And I'd gotten home Saturday, this a week, 8 days before Easter, basically. And by the time Monday or Tuesday rolled around, I was feeling so out of sorts, so miserable. Had basically had the hiccups for about a week straight that I had to get myself to the hospital. And it was then that, found out that they were going to do a second amputation on me. So it was on Good Friday of all days that I became a double amputee or bilateral or whatever you want to call it. Which was followed up with a week in the hospital and roughly 4 weeks in a rehab facility at Ohio State. And by the way, kudos to them for what a magnificent job they had done. And then the backtrack again, with all the COVID business going on, I ended up losing my uncle and my uncle's best friend, who we had always called Uncle. And they were best friends and died within a month or two of each other. And it was just devastating loss to top off what had already been a challenging year. But once I got out of rehab and was home, I got a replacement for my left foot. At least as far as a prosthetic goes, got a brand new prosthetic for that, and was waiting for insurance and my leg to kind of swell down a little bit before I could get fitted for that leg. So basically I was a one-legged bandit getting driven around and basically confined to my home here. And no more than a few weeks after I'd gotten home, I had lost my best friend. And ironically enough, he was having issues with his foot, and apparently it got septic. And I miss him more than words will ever say. And I was grateful that I talked to him last when I was in rehab, so it was probably about a month or so before he passed away. And I made sure I told him that I loved him. And just another thing on top of the losses that I've experienced throughout the year, and that one kind of topped it off. But I managed to get through that thanks to my faith, my fellow Knights of Columbus, my family and friends who were there to support me. Got my second leg in July and started to learn to drive again and be hopefully somewhat contributor to my world. And I'm so grateful for that. I also, at that time, I had applied for disability, and as with the case, I was turned down initially, went to a law firm. We're still pending on that case. They're waiting on a psychological test at this point to give me, which I think makes them crazy. But in any event, and I'm sure I'm missing a whole lot of stuff here that had just happened in between my interactions with friends. There goes my first son, Margie. But interactions with friends, interactions with family that really have just made this such a telltale year for me. So if I end up backtracking or retracing my steps or what have you, again, I ask for your kind indulgence and just kind of bear with me here. So, one of my fellow knights ended up letting me learn about a possible position open with, of all things, a prosthetic manufacturer, or manufacturer of liners, feet, foot shells, things along those lines, as a customer care rep. They liked what I said, and they hired me right after Labor Day, which I am ever grateful for. And I can honestly say with full conviction that I haven't felt this stress-free about work in at least 4 years. And it's done such wonders for my mental state, where I don't have to dread driving into work, thinking about what's going to happen with this, what's going to happen with that. I can drive in, and by the way, the drive is absolutely pleasant because I'm going away from Columbus while everybody's heading towards Columbus. So I'm on my own path, as it were, or the path of least traffic, which I just enjoy thoroughly. But the environment at work has just been so pleasant, where I can be a lot more of myself and still work hard and do the job well. And I expressed that gratefulness at Thanksgiving, and it ended up having me win a jacket from them, which, again, I'm most appreciative and surprised and shocked and what have you. But I can't say enough good things about where I'm working now, because it has been such a blessing. And honestly, in retrospect, my whole year's been a blessing. Despite all the pitfalls I've faced, losing my right foot, losing people that I love and respect and admire, and which kind of goes to another aspect of losing loved ones. And I lost a couple other loved ones, not through their passing, but for what they've been led to believe. And I will say this outright, I will say this up front, that I am not vaccinated from COVID. And I thought, prayed over whether or not to do so, and there's various reasons why I haven't. One is the antibody that was given to me last year. I believe that's going to help protect me. I believe my natural immunity is going to help me. I believe that the vaccines that I have taken in general over the course of my life have had ill effects on me, and I would rather that not happen. And I'm going to take my chances, and I believe I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. And unfortunately, with my uncle's passing and that being in February, and they waited until September to do the celebration of life, where they were going to basically segregate the vaccinated from the unvaccinated. And I just couldn't in good conscience do that. Could not be a participant in that. And come Thanksgiving, I was basically not welcome to the family Thanksgiving dinner. And thank God for my sister. And a big shout out to her, because she basically said, yeah, I'm not going to go if everyone's not invited. And I have a couple of cousins who are not vaccinated either. And whatever their reasons are, that's their reasons. And for those who had been vaccinated, they have their reasons. And I will respect those reasons. But to have that segregated, to not include those who choose not to be vaccinated, it's very hard for me to respect that. And in a lot of ways, I've lost family members due to that aspect. And it's very unfortunate. And I do pray for them every day, that hopefully they will think better of that and welcome me back to whatever activities they may have. And that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out tonight. Just, again, more of a catharsis for myself, but also to say to those who are vaccinated, please don't exclude the unvaccinated. And for the unvaccinated, please don't exclude the vaccinated. We're all on this earth together. And honestly, we shouldn't let something like that, whatever your beliefs are as far as vaccination or not being vaccinated, that should not be a separating factor in families, in friends. And I would even say politics shouldn't separate us. Religion shouldn't separate us. Unless you're involving yourself in completely bad behavior, we need to sit here and just love one another. And I think that's part of what compelled me to do this tonight. And again, hearkening back to being at Christmas Mass, that we are not put on this earth to separate us from our brothers and sisters. We're here to love one another, even if they don't love us. And I've experienced that, and unfortunately I have probably been on the other end of that as well. We're not here for a long time. We're a blip on the radar of the timeline of life itself. And I hope that we can just spend our time taking care of one another to help right what we have done wrong, to help right what others have done wrong, to love those who despise us or hate us or separate us for whatever reason. And knowing what a joyous time this should be for everybody. I think there's definitely a sense of fear, a sense of sadness in a lot of us. And it really shouldn't be that way. I've looked back on Facebook posts and have said we should have Christmas every day, where we give of ourselves to others, and others give of themselves to us, so that we can be better people. And unfortunately, there's a lot of delusional thinking, a lot of vitriol, a lot of groupthink to separate us. And it just shouldn't be that way. And one thing I've learned through my trials and tribulations is I can't make it through this life without any of you. And by you I mean my family, my friends, my colleagues, to the total strangers who are listening to the sound of my voice, to a boy in his microphone, to all my karaoke friends. I would be nothing without you. And I hope I can project that onto you. And I hope I'm worthy of you listening. Hopefully I'm worthy enough where you think of me and smile for the jokes I've done, perhaps not on this podcast, but in social media, to just trying to be a good person. I hope I'm worthy enough for God. I hope I'm worthy enough for all of you. You are all worthy to me. Regardless of what you think or feel of me, if you love me, if you hate me, if you're indifferent of me, you are all worthy. And I want to thank you for listening to these podcasts. I will continue to leave them up for the time being, and I know I'll be talking to all of you soon. And again, I apologize. This was something I decided to do probably no more than 2 hours ago. That I wanted to speak to all of you, to thank you for listening, to let you know that I love all of you. And hopefully I can come up with a little more structured podcast for you. But this is something that's been completely off the cuff. So, again, I realize I'm all over the place, and I beg your kind indulgence for that. But if you've listened thus far, I want to thank you for your friendship and in giving me a chance to tell my story. And hopefully I've reached out to one of you who are sad, are depressed, especially considering this time of year where it should be so joyous. And know that you got a friend. And you're welcome to email me at any time. My email is nofeetsg@gmail.com. So nofeetsg@gmail.com. I will look at the email if you do send it. And hopefully I can be of some help if you are not feeling joy in your life or happiness. And I'll let you know that you're worthy. And hopefully I can be worthy too. So, I'd like to thank you for listening, and to everyone throughout the world, whoever may download this episode or any of the 12 previous episodes, thank you for listening. And I may not talk to you next week. I may not talk to you till next year. But I want you to know that you are loved. I love you. God loves you. You are worthy. And I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, a most prosperous New Year. And remember, we can all do this together. Thank you, and everyone have a great day and a great year.